Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. Today, we're wrapping up the series on A/B testing and experimentation. We were lucky to speak with some great guests covering the tools A/B Tasty, Google Optimize, VWO, and Optimizely. I think we learned a lot about this space, so let's go ahead and hop in. How's it going, Moshe?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing wonderful.
Excellent. This was a really interesting series because I think we learned a lot of stuff there. I can say personally that there was a lot of stuff in there that I didn't know, and it was really cool to learn. I also must admit, I don't do A/B testing. So,
yeah.
I mean, well, maybe it's a very, maybe it's not completely true. I do some, but very, very rudimentary and very small stuff.
Not in the scientific way, I guess.
Not in the scientific way, and not in the way that I should do, really. So that's I've done in the past. I think I mentioned in one of the episodes that I used Optimizely maybe like 8-9 years ago, but it was in the capacity of really including A/B testing functionality within our platform to help marketing create different messages in the application and then test those messages. So our platform had like a component in it that was a marketing component. So it had like places to put messages or campaigns that marketing could put in there. And with our clients, which we call them partners, we were crafting different type of marketing campaigns to make people more incited to use the product or to buy from the product. And all of our clients / partners wanted to have the ability to do some A/B testing. So we integrated. Back then it was Optimizely. We integrated it into the application. So I was a product manager for that integration. And then I worked with our marketing to help them as they were doing this crafting of messages. But it wasn't really A/B testing of new functionality. It was the A/B testing of those campaign messages, right?
Right.
It was limited. It was really limited to that. But the value in A/B testing is much, much more than that. And I think that this is what we heard through this series.
I agree.
We had also a very varied type of guests. We had a couple of CROs, and then we have Romil in the beginning, and he is like an expert on CRO, and we're very lucky to have him on our first episode.
It was nice having him on the first episode to really lay the foundation for what we might learn along the way. So
definitely, especially in the space that we don't know
much about.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that, as product manager, we don't know much about because we don't use it too much. So we should definitely try to use it more.
Yeah. I agree. It seems like it does go into the marketing space traditionally. Again, like some of these other things we've talked about, it does blur the line between these two spaces. They do have a lot of crossover.
Well, the idea in product, if we're focusing on product, the idea is that we want to improve our products all the time. We want to, and some of us are growth product managers, and growth product managers are doing a bit different things than core product management. I don't know if that's even right to say that, core. But in growth, the idea is how do we grow our client base? How do we get more people to adopt the product? How do we get more people to convert into users and stuff like that? And many times, and that's a bit relating to marketing, but it's really from the perspective of the product. So if we're talking about product-led, how does the product can help you create growth for the organization and for the usage of the product, right? So in this case, a lot of the ideas that we have for features or for changing the features could be just ideas, hypotheses, and we want to sustain it by some data. And if we have different ideas about how we can do it, each one of those ideas can be an hypothesis, or they can be competing hypotheses, and that's where A/B testing come into play. That we should try to test all of them as much as possible, and then see who is the winner. So rather than try one and then say, okay, I see that I have 6% or 20% or 50% conversion. Maybe if I tried the other one, I would have got bigger than that. So that's really the idea of A/B testing for product. So it's a bit about growth, but it's also about which feature create better value. And we touched on it when we talked with Andrew, and also when we talked with Ken about how do we do it with least effort as possible. Because if we have 3 ideas and each one of them will take us 3 months to develop, then that's not going to be very helpful.
Efficient. Yeah. Things might have changed by then. So
exactly. And also, I mean, the ROI on the development of each one of these might be diminishing, or the expense, to develop each one of these will diminish really the ROI of one of them winning over the other. So we really need to find the fastest way to do that and test it. And this is where these tools that we were talking about needs to help us in a way that either it's a back end or a front end or whatever it is.
The tool is so important because I'm thinking of when you come up with your hypothesis and you're going to test it, it does take time. And you can have someone on your product team that might be dedicated to this. And maybe that's where the CRO comes into it. They have the time and the experience to develop these tests and develop these processes that can make the A/B testing work. And to not only do that, but to analyze the feedback, analyze what the tool is telling you, whether that's the statistics, whether that's you're just taking what the tool says for face value. And I guess that goes to how far you're going to dig into it.
Yeah.
But it could be, I think you can get into the analysis paralysis thing to where you're like always trying to test stuff over and over and like, because one test may lead to something new, a new finding that you go test that. So a product manager might need someone on the team, that whether that's a data analyst, data scientist, on the team to actually focus on that. You as a product manager, you can help formulate that hypothesis and at least have a good understanding of what you need to do, but then actually have someone go out there and execute.
We did touch about it a bit when we talked with Romeo, because he mentioned how where he worked at Lablos Digital, all the A/B testing and experimentation is centered by his team, and then he give this service to all the other product managers. And I think he mentioned maybe 10 or more product managers or teams that he's working with.
They're doing it.
So there's definitely a way to structure it that will be useful for that.
Yep.
And have that expertise, because I don't, as product manager, I don't think that I would know exactly how to do all of that, or I will have the expertise to do it. And this is something definitely that when I did it back then and I learned how to do it, I saw it's a whole thing that I definitely have to put my mind into and change a bit the way I think and stuff like that. It kind of also reminded me when I was a product manager for an AI product, where in AI, it's all about data and experiment with different models and statistical answers that the model is giving you and stuff like that. So it's a different mindset that you really have to develop.
You really have to have that training, I guess, and that expertise in a way, because if you take what the tool is saying, you have to validate that. The tool could tell you something, but you still need to have intuition and experience to say, okay, yeah, I believe that is correct. Or it could lead you down the wrong path, I think. You're really putting a lot of faith in the tool itself. Make sure the tool you're using is right for you. But you also need to have that feel for it to say, yeah, I do believe that this information is correct. I think you do need to understand some of the underlying statistics, I think. You don't have to be an expert in that necessarily, but I think that certainly could help you have faith in what it's telling you to do, because you're going to go make a change in your system that could ultimately have a negative impact. Like, hey, we did this testing and it said everything was going to be great, but you had the wrong sampling size, or you deployed it to the wrong people, and the feedback wasn't what you intended. And so now you're actually selling less of something. And then sales and marketing is like, hey, what, you guys tested this and what happened?
Well, you brought there a good point, because I would definitely rely on the tool. I would definitely say, that's what the tool told me. This is what the tool is showing. Because that will be also the value that I'm trying to get from the tool.
Right.
Because I don't want to go and take years of courses in university for statistics and to understand did I do it right or not.
Yeah.
I have other things on my mind, and that's not the main thing that I want to
Right.
focus on. So I would want the tool to be as accurate as possible and to give me that. So this trust building is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And by seeing all the people that are using it, and the tool is still growing, like all of these tools that we talked about are being out there for some time.
Mm-hmm.
Optimizely, Google Optimize, VWO, I only heard about recently, but I know it's been out there. So it's just me that didn't hear about it. So I know it's been there. And also A/B testing, I understand that it's growing quite fast.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that there is a trust out there by its users and the growing community that are using them.
Yep.
I don't know, and that's something we didn't look into, what these internal communities are saying about, is it really trustworthy or not? Is there some errors there or whatever? Yeah. But I would assume, if I would choose one of those, I would assume that yes, it is trustworthy, and I want to rely on the result it gives me.
I agree. You want to have that trust in what it's telling you. So yeah, I do agree with that. And I think that trust is probably built over time. And probably when you onboard the tool, implement it in your application, you're going to need to have some trust in it and some leap of faith, I guess, in saying, okay, like we're about to use this tool. You should have a leap of faith and say, okay, this thing's going to work.
On the other end, it's also not just about the tool, because the tool is as good as the tool is. Mm-hmm. It's also about structuring those experiments and knowing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that Ken actually, in one of the comments on LinkedIn, he kind of wrote something about a nightmare scenario. Mm-hmm. And I think that nightmare scenario was because the tool was not used properly. So I think that there is that balance over there between knowing to really use the tool. And when I'm saying using the tool, what I mean is also which experiments will be the right time to do them, that they will not affect other experiments and stuff like that. It's like anything else where you have a very complex systems and you touch one thing and then you touch another thing at the same time. It's very hard to put down your fingers to tell which one of those affected the entire system.
Right.
It could be a combination of both. So if you are creating different experiments that are in the same areas, or you're not done with one experiment and you started another experiment, or your segmentation is improper, then I'm sure that could be a lot of false positives or things that are not because the system is not working well, but because of the way you have set up those experiments.
That's a good point. Yeah, something else happened. You might be testing something else that has an effect on your other tests. That's a really good point.
And that's why you need someone that really knows what they're doing, that have experience in it, that have done the bad things and failed, and now they know what not to do and what to avoid.
And that's why you have a CRO, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that Romil also touched on that CRO is a bit maybe a misleading name for that, because CRO is coming from marketing as a conversion rate optimizer, where we really want a product optimizer.
There we go. We need to rebrand.
But we can't use the acronym PO because that's used for something else.
It's a really good point. And maybe this space, I don't know how long this space has been around, so maybe it's maturing. To your point, with these tools that are on the market, they, Optimizely's been around for a number of years, but maybe this is something that is becoming more a part of product space.
And
leaving that marketing space.
All the tools in product are not mature yet, in my opinion. So they're all quite new compared to some other tools. Even if they are in the market for 10 years, that's seems a lot of time in software, but when you look at ERP systems and other systems, they're traditionally started really 30 years ago or 40 years ago, because that's what people started managing back then.
Right.
So maturity wise, not that I'm saying that a lot of ERP systems are good, but they still have ways to mature as well. but they have gone through some iterations and stuff like that, right? Like if you look at word processing systems, they've been around for many years, since the beginning of software, I guess. And Google Documents these days, or even Microsoft Word these days, is definitely much better than what people used to use 30 years ago. So the iterations have gone through a lot of changes and a lot of updates and stuff like that. Or look at design systems. Like if you use Canva today, you're much better than the 10 or 20 years ago that you didn't have tools like that, right?
Absolutely.
So the product specific tools are pretty new, and I think they're also new because this discipline of being a product manager is also pretty new compared to some other disciplines in technology. So definitely there will be space for improvements over there.
I think another point I liked was Ken's point on whether you have your full stack Optimizely, or you have the web version of it, and engineering's involvement in it. I'm trying to think of not only are you testing back end and testing front end, so you really need to have a strong engineering group on hand.
Yes.
To help support this, I think.
Yes.
In some cases, not all cases. I think some of the stuff we talked about with AB Tasty.
AB Tasty also has a backend one.
Oh, it did? Okay.
It's called, I don't remember what the name was, but it's called something different.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, and Marion said that they're not using it, but she did mention the name. Yeah, so I think that all of them are going to that, and the front end is a much easier one. This is where marketing really is seeing stuff, and it started from marketing, but it goes towards the product itself. But all products have a backend, and just to test stuff on the front end is sometimes just touching the surface.
So when it comes to the data and the structure of your data and being able to present data in new ways, obviously the world is thirsty for data and big on, I don't want to say big data.
Today, big data is big data. Everything.
Yeah, data is big anyways. Yeah. But being able to have that engineering principles there and engineering support and making sure that they understand the back end, because the front end at the end of the day can't operate without the other. So you need to have end-to-end testing all the way through it to make sure these kind of things work, I think. But
that's where you have to be very mindful and focused on how to do that. Are you building a whole full stack backend for that? Or are you building some mockups or some very dumb data, but data that will be able to support some of these tests? So how do you do that? And that's where a lot of thinking has to go to strategy and thinking with the engineers. So that's where the engineers really have to be very embedded into that.
This area could really get pretty robust in a company, and depending on how much resources you want to put into it, it could really get big.
And that's where the investment in that has to be weighed with the value that you're trying to get from that. So investing in that, there is definitely an investment. But then if you're doing it right over time, that's where the value needs to be created with KPIs of increasing engagement in the product, increasing sales of the product, things like that will really help the organization get so much more from their product. And that's the reason to do it. I don't think there is any other reason to do that.
I'm envisioning another roadmap, another backlog of all these different tests.
and I think the way that Andrew's team is structured is to do only that, to do these experiments.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's maybe a separate team that is responsible for that. Sometimes it is part of the same team that are doing different type of these experiments, and those experiments can have different type of levels of engagement or technical abilities that they can do there.
If you can get some real value out of it, some real wins, then you're just like, wow, this is really working. And that's when you take off and say, okay, like Ken mentioned, like they're still not mature in the sense that they have a full-blown experimentation team.
Because it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time. Yeah, for sure. And everyone has to get up to speed and know what's going on.
And I think you have to fail before you succeed.
Right.
So you have to try things and see where was it that you failed, what was done wrong, learn from that experience. I don't think there is a way around that.
Yeah. And we talked about the repository of these experiments. I'm not sure. It didn't sound like the tools necessarily had that, but they were using this stuff like offline between Confluence, Google Sheets.
Yeah, it's more about how do they take the information and the insights that they learn and share them outside of the tool. Because the tools, some of them seems to be much more technical or have lots of data or could confuse people if they look at them. And if they just want to highlight specific wins or losses or whatever it is, specific learning, how do they structure that and share it externally? It seems like most of them, they have to take it out of the system and do it externally.
Yep.
And I think also Roman said in the beginning that this is probably one of the missing parts in all of those tools.
That's right. He did mention that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just evolution of this product. Maybe it's also because it's only one endpoint of data where you have other endpoints of data. So maybe they're saying, this data is exportable or can be taken out somewhere else. And then all the other data that's coming from other data sources will help to create one unified insight engine. This is where you know what it has, from analytics and BI and all of that. So that's where so maybe that's the reasoning behind that as well. It will be interesting to follow up and see how it will look like in the future, what they will come up in the future.
Yeah, and even that can get big. Maybe that's why they haven't approached it necessarily, because that could be its own separate feature within the tool that, hey, we do this repository of things. But I'm thinking if you could have so many different experiments and you could move a shopping cart from the top of corner of the page to another point of the page, and that's a separate experiment. So you would need to flag it. You would need to have some sort of say, okay, how do I go back and find out where I put that shopping cart in that experiment? So that could be, it could become a huge, repository of experiments over time.
When I build a product, I always think about what is core for my product that no one else is doing, or that I really have to put my focus on to build, versus what other products are doing already that could complement my product, and I can just integrate with them and create this full experience eventually. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel that for what is outside of the scope of my product. Right. And that's maybe one of the things here that, it's a lower priority for all of them to do this type of thing, where the core is really how do I create this test? How do I collect the data? How do I compare those tests? How do I flag what is winning and what is losing and all of that stuff?
Yeah.
So that's really the core, I think, of A/B testing, where, managing data and notifying people about it or insights from data might be done already by some other type of products.
And this is where integrations come into it. Say, okay, we know people like Confluence. We know companies already have it. Let's just integrate with Confluence and send your results over there to a wiki or something like that. And then
maybe
heap or mix panel, like, hey, I know people are going to want to get additional insights from the data. So let's have an integration with the heap and the mix panel amplitude and send the data over there.
Or to a data warehouse. So
or to a data warehouse, or you could,
So heap and amplitude will send to a data warehouse, optimized in VWO will send to a data warehouse, and everything in the data warehouse will get from all of these points and will create these insights over there.
Because you ultimately probably want to layer this in. I know Andrew's spoken about this, I think, in the past, to where you want to layer all this together. You want to get, I think he spoke about this when we talked in the past about product analytics. You want to layer these experiments in with other data in your organization.
Exactly.
And so you get a better picture of the success and failure and how is that benefiting other parts of my company. And then that also democratizes the information. So people that may not be part of your experimentation team can come in and say, okay, what are the results from this experimentation?
I think we should do a series about data analytics one day. I mean, tools like Tableau or in Power BI and some other tools that, can sit in front of a data warehouse and get all of this data from different sources and provide dashboards for different types of insights into the business and the product, etc. So I think this will be definitely up your alley, Matt, for us to do. And maybe sometimes we kind of neglect these things from product managers because even what we talked about, data analytics for the product, like heap and pendo and amplitude, it only focuses on how the product behave. There is other things that come in from A/B testing, things that come in from other systems. And at the end of the day, you really want to have all of this in one place so you can actually create a much better picture and deeper view into the data. So I think that there is definitely a space there for us to talk about this type of product. I know personally that I rely on my BI team and my data analytics experts on that. And we actually have a new BI product manager where I work. I should introduce you to him.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. And so I rely on them and stuff like that, but I'm still consuming this information. Right. And I still tell them these are the KPIs I'm looking for and help me, put it all together and stuff like that. So it's definitely a type of products that will be helpful for product managers to understand.
All these tools and all these things that we talk about have a connectivity to analytics, BI. I'm even thinking about the experimentation when it comes to actual data science. You may actually have a data science team. You may have a BI team. There is a opportunity when it comes to the common interest in data, products using data, BI is using data science. So I think that's a really good point and probably something we need to maybe unpack one day for sure.
Perfect. So just to wrap up, we started this episode. It was a very eye-opening and a learning experience for me.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the iceberg picture. We just saw the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot more to this that we weren't able to get to. So I definitely hope the listeners are interested by this space, by this conversation, and by these tools. And I hope that they can dig into it because I think there's a lot here to be uncovered.
Yeah, I wonder if we could create an A/B test experiment with the podcast.
Oh, that'd be nice.
maybe record two different sessions for the same topic, and then publish both of them in different places, and then see who gets what.
You always think about these social platforms and different things we're doing. We're all part of a test, I guess. Anytime you get on an application, we are
definitely in the segmentations of different tests without knowing it for sure.
Yeah. This was a really good series. I really do appreciate the guests that came on. It was really a pleasure to have them on the show.
And what's coming up next few episodes? We're excited to have some interesting guests.
Yes, absolutely. I think we're looking at some startups coming up. We've been approached by some startups who have some really interesting products. And I think that there's an opportunity to promote the work they're doing in the product space and how they're hoping to help product managers, product teams, the data teams inside those product teams. So I'm really excited to speak with those founders.
Yeah. So these are startups of tools that could help product managers. And because our startups, there is not a lot of users yet in their specifically in product. So there might be in some other areas, but there is still some help that it could help product managers. So we see the value over there. And we wanted to give them also some platform. So we are trying to help them as well. So these will be with founders rather than with users. So it will be different from what we've seen before, but let's see what happens.
I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a good opportunity to shine some light on some things that things that are coming up. We've talked about things on the market, and these tools are on the market, but maybe they haven't reached the maturity that these other things that we've talked about before, like Jira, or
definitely.
So I'm really excited about it, and those will be coming up in our next series that we're planning.
Perfect.
Thanks to all the guests we've had, and thanks to all the listeners. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And if there was a tool out there that you didn't see in the series, we know that there are other A/B testing tools, but we couldn't get guests to come to the show. So we could always open it up again to other tools. So if you are using another A/B testing tool and you would like to be on the show, just send us a note, and we'll be happy to bring you up.
Yep. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Matt.
Bye-bye.